AITA for thinking of ending my long-term friendship? We met when we were 12, two awkward kids hiding from the chaos of a rainy lunch break under the metal overhang behind the gym. She had chipped black nail polish and a laugh that sounded like she wasn't afraid of anything. I had a too-neat ponytail, a planner full of color-coded tabs, and a habit of apologizing for taking up space. Somehow, we clicked. Back then, friendship was simple. Split a packet of sour gummies, swear to hate the same math teacher, and you're bonded for life. We said the word always a lot. Always partners for projects. Always showing up for each other's birthdays. Always graduating together, moving to the same city, being each other's maid of honor. 12-year-olds draw straight lines through the future like life is graph paper. We grew into a rhythm that felt permanent. She was chaos, I was order. She'd text me at midnight, "Let's dye our hair plum," and I'd reply, "I have an algebra test at 8, then show up anyway with 2 old towels and a trash bag for the floor. I learned how to improvise from her. She learned how to set reminders from me. AT sleepovers, we'd whisper into the dark about the versions of ourselves we were sure we'd become. She wanted to open a vintage store with a tiny coffee bar in the back. I wanted to work in marketing, run my own campaigns, maybe even manage a small team by 30. In every version, we were side by side. High school only made our differences brighter, but also made our bond feel stronger. She was magnetic, could walk into a room and walk out with a story. I was the one who remembered deadlines, brought spare chargers, and kept tissues in my bag just in case. When her first boyfriend cheated on her after homecoming, I slept on her bedroom floor for 3 nights until she laughed again. When my parents fought loud enough that the neighbors called the cops, she showed up with burnt cookies and a playlist called Emergency Sunshine that IT felt unshakable. Until it didn't. That as we moved deeper into our 20s, the gap between our lives widened. Slowly at first, then sharply. She leaned harder into nights at her local pub, while I leaned into classes, work, and saving for the future. Every time I suggested doing something new, a movie, a day trip, even just a walk by the river, she brushed it off. Too boring, she'd say. Or, too much effort. Let's just hit the pub. Meanwhile, I was exhausted from the routine. Same dim tables, same sticky floors, same drunk regulars. She'd be laughing, holding court like the star of the show, while I sat nursing a flat soda, feeling like an extra in a story I didn't want to be in anymore. The turning point came when she started bragging about someone we'd gone to school with. He'd been arrested, the kind of headline people screenshot in group chats with a mix of shock and pity. Most of us recoiled. She leaned in. She started writing him letters. Then came the visit. Afterward, she sent me a message. He couldn't take his eyes off me the whole time. I stared at the screen, numb. She thought it was something to laugh about, something worth bragging over, while all I could think was, why are you treating this like an accomplishment? That was the moment the unease inside me solidified. It wasn't just her immaturity anymore. It was something darker, more unsettling. From then on, everything felt heavier. I wasn't just bored by our friendship. I felt drained by it. Every hangout left me emptier, like I'd poured all my energy into a black hole that gave nothing back. She never asked how my classes were going. She forgot the names of the people at my job I'd mentioned dozens of times. She didn't even notice when I cut my hours because of burnout. The only stories that mattered were hers, her latest night out, her petty pub drama, her complaints about life while bragging about benefits money that I'd come home late, my clothes smelling like beer and cigarettes, replaying her chaotic rambling in my head. And instead of laughing, I just felt tired. It was as if I'd been holding up the weight of 10 years of loyalty, while she skipped along, oblivious that I was buckling. And yet, the guilt gnawed at me. 10 years. 10 years of sleepovers, secrets, birthdays, promises of always. The number itself felt like a chain. I kept asking myself, does ending this make me selfish? Or does staying make me self-destructive? Some nights, lying awake, I thought about how loyalty isn't meant to feel like suffocation. Friendship isn't supposed to feel like drowning. But with her, that's exactly what it had become. The thing about red flags is that when you've known someone long enough, you start painting them over with memories. I excused so many things she did because I remembered the girl who once held my hand at 12 years old when I was too nervous to audition for choir. I remembered the teenager who biked across town at 10 p.m. with a bag of chips and chocolate bars because she heard my parents were fighting. Again, but those memories. didn't erase the woman she was becoming. And that woman scared me that IT wasn't just the pub routine anymore. It wasn't just the endless nights of gossip and cheap beer. It was the people she surrounded herself with. People I would never have chosen for myself. People who made me uneasy with their careless words and glassy eyes. People whose laughter was always just a little too loud and whose tempers could flip in an instant. The moment with the classmate in prison had been the first shock, but it wasn't the last. She talked about him with this strange pride, like writing letters to someone behind bars gave her some kind of edge. When she told me about visiting him, I noticed how her tone had changed. It wasn't just a joke anymore. There was a thrill in her voice. Like she loved the danger of it. Like she wanted me to be impressed, but I wasn't impressed. I was unsettled. I didn't tell her that, though. Instead, I just nodded, smiled faintly, and changed the subject. Because how do you look someone in the eye after a decade and say, "You're becoming someone I don't recognize?" And it didn't stop there. She started bragging about other questionable choices, flirting with men who were already married, laughing about how far she could push the line, hanging out with people who had reputations for fights and arrests, dismissing my concerns with, "Don't be so uptight. It's just fun." But it wasn't fun for me. Every time she pulled me into that world, I felt like I was standing on thin ice, waiting for the crack. I'd sit there in the corner of the pub while she laughed too loudly with people I didn't trust, and I'd think, this is how bad things happen. You hang around long enough, and eventually, you get caught in the fallout. That I started noticing how my own body betrayed me around her. My stomach knotted before I saw her. My chest tightened walking into that pub. My brain ran through excuses to cancel plans, but my heart kept whispering, 10 years. You can't just walk away. But loyalty felt different now. It wasn't comforting anymore. It wasn't, "I've got your back no matter what." It was, "If I stay, I might go down with you." And that realization terrified me, because suddenly, it wasn't just about being drained or bored. It was about my safety, my sanity, my future. And I couldn't ignore that voice inside me anymore. The one growing louder every day, telling me that maybe the kindest thing I could do for both of us was finally let go. Friendship is supposed to feel like a two-way street. Even when one person is going through a rough patch, there should be some balance, some give and take. But with her, it became painfully clear that the street only went one way. Toward her, that I didn't notice it right away, because I'd been conditioned for years to show up for her without expecting much in return. She had always been the louder one, the center of attention, the one whose problems seemed to take up all the air in the room. I thought that was just the dynamic. She filled the space, and I held it together behind the scenes. But the older I got, the more I realized how invisible I was to her. When I told her I'd been promoted at work, the first real recognition I'd gotten after months of long shifts and late nights, she barely reacted. Just a distracted, "That's good. Anyway, let me tell you what happened at the pub yesterday." And within seconds, my accomplishment was buried under some story about a drunken argument I couldn't care less about. When my grandmother passed away, I texted her. She didn't reply until 2 days later with a casual, "Sorry, I've been busy. Want to grab a drink?" I remember staring at the message, my grief still raw, wondering how she could possibly think that was the right response. But when her dog got sick, she called me sobbing at 3 in the morning. I picked up. I stayed on the phone until dawn, talking her through every possible outcome, searching up vets with 24-hour services. Because that's what I did. I showed up. Even when she didn't, it was like that every single time. My heartbreaks, my struggles, my milestones, they slid right past her. But her smallest inconvenience became my emergency. If she was lonely, I dropped everything to keep her company. If she was angry, I listened to her rant for hours. If she needed money, I lent it, even when I barely had enough myself. And the thing is, I never minded supporting her. Not at first. That's what you do for the people you love. But what broke me was the realization that she didn't even notice the imbalance. She didn't see the sacrifices I made, the way I rearranged my life to fit around hers. She just expected it. I started keeping a mental list, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't stop myself. All the birthdays she forgot, the calls she never returned, the times I sat alone in a cafe, waiting for he. It didn't happen overnight. You don't wake up one morning and say, "I'm done with a 10-year friendship." What really happens is more subtle. The distance grows in inches, not miles. At first, I just stopped answering her texts right away. Instead of jumping the second my phone buzzed, I let it sit on the counter for an hour. Then two. Eventually, sometimes a whole day. She'd send me memes from the pub or blurry selfies with strangers I didn't know, and where I once would have replied with laughing emojis. I started typing short answers like LOL or nice. When she called, I screened it. I told myself it was because I was tired from work or because I was in the middle of studying. But the truth was simpler. I didn't want to hear her voice. Because I knew it would mean more drama, more chaos. More of me being her audience instead of her friend. The more I pulled back, the lighter I felt, but also guiltier. There was this strange relief in silence. I'd spend a Friday night curled up with a book or catching up on a show, and for once I didn't feel drained by the end of it. But then that little voice would creep in. You're abandoning her. You promised always. I even muted our group chat. That was a big step for me, because I'd been the kind of person who couldn't stand unread notifications. But watching her last-minute plans pop up over and over again, pub at 9, who's down for shots, made me feel sick. I didn't want to live in that loop anymore, waiting for her to decide what scraps of time I was allowed to fit into. The thing is, she noticed. Not in the way I hoped, though. She didn't ask how I was doing or why I'd been distant. She just got more dramatic. You've changed, she said once, half laughing, half accusing, as if changing was a crime. And maybe it was true. I had changed. I wanted more from life than sticky floors and hangovers that left me useless for a day. I wanted a career, stability, relationships that lifted me up instead of draining me. But in her world, wanting more was the same as betraying her. Pulling away wasn't easy. Every time I ignored her call, I felt both stronger and smaller. Stronger because I was protecting myself. Smaller because I could hear her voice in my head, mocking me for being boring or too serious. It was like I was fighting with two versions of myself. The girl who had promised forever, and the woman who realized forever might not be healthy. What surprised me most was how my body reacted to the space I created. My sleep got better. My anxiety settled. I laughed more with coworkers, spent more time with my family. Started imagining what it would feel like to have friends who matched the person I was becoming, not the person I used to be. And yet, the tether wasn't completely broken. Even with the relief, I couldn't shake the guilt. 10 years is heavy. Loyalty doesn't just disappear. And every time I thought about cutting the cord completely, I saw 12-year-old me, holding out a pack of sour gummies under the rain, whispering, always. The silence didn't stay silent for long. People like her don't let things slip quietly into the background. She thrived on energy, noise, laughter, arguments, and my new habit of pulling back became something she couldn't ignore. That IT started small, with comments slipped into conversation. One night when I finally agreed to meet her at the pub after weeks of dodging, she leaned across the sticky table with her half-empty glass and smirked. You've changed, you know. You're no fun anymore. I laughed weakly, hoping to brush it off. But the words clung to me. Changed. No fun. In her world, growing up was an insult. Responsibility was betrayal. The tension grew sharper each time we spoke. She'd call me out for not answering her texts fast enough. What? Are you too busy for me now? She'd say with that half-joking, half-accusing tone that left no safe reply. If I apologized, I sounded guilty. If I defended myself, I sounded hostile. Then came the night it boiled over. She showed up at my apartment unannounced. I was sitting in sweatpants, surrounded by notes from a course I was taking, when the buzzer rang. Before I could even decide if I wanted to let her up, she was at my door, bright red lipstick smudged, perfume cloying, carrying the whirlwind of the pub with her. You're avoiding me, she said flatly, no pretense this time that I tried to stay calm. I've just been busy. Work, school, family, don't give me that, she snapped, dropping onto my couch like she owned it. You're pulling away. I can feel it. You're not the same. You don't come out anymore. You don't answer me. You're acting like I've done something wrong. I stood there frozen, 1,000 responses crashing into each other in my head. Part of me wanted to shout, yes, you have done something wrong. You drain me. You ignore me. You brag about things that scare me. You don't see me at all. Another part of me wanted to soothe her, to smooth the sharp edges like I always had. Because conflict made me feel like I was 12 again, begging for peace. Instead, what came out was the truth. Softer than I expected, but heavier than anything I'd said to her in years. I feel like this friendship is only about you. Her face hardened instantly, as if I'd slapped her. "Excuse me. I'm always there for you," I continued, my voice shaking but steady. "When you need something, when you're upset, when you want to talk about your life, I drop everything. But when I need you, you're not there. Not really. And I can't keep pretending that doesn't hurt." For a moment, silence filled the room. The kind of silence that comes after breaking something fragile. Then she laughed, sharp and bitter. "Wow. So now I'm the bad guy? After everything I've been through, after everything I've shared with you, you're going to sit there and act like I'm some kind of villain? You've changed. You've gotten selfish. You're not the friend I used to know." The words sliced through me, but deep down, I realized something. She wasn't listening. She never really had. This wasn't a conversation. It was a performance. And in her eyes, I had just become the antagonist in her story that I didn't argue back. I didn't defend myself. I just sat there, staring at her, feeling the final strands of our decade-long bond fray in my hands. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe letting go wouldn't be betrayal at all. Maybe it would finally be freedom. After she left my apartment that night, the silence was deafening. For years, her voice had been a constant background noise in my life. Texts, calls, laughter, rants. Suddenly, the quiet felt alien. I sat on my couch long after the door closed, surrounded by my notes and books, but unable to focus on anything except the echo of her words. "You've changed. You're selfish. You're not the friend I used to know." And maybe she was right. I had changed. But wasn't that the point of growing up? Wasn't that what we were supposed to do? I found myself replaying our entire friendship like a film reel. The beginning, when we swore always. The teenage years, when we leaned on each other through heartbreaks and family fights. The first time she called me crying in the middle of the night, and how I had biked across town just to sit on her porch until she calmed down. The way she used to write my birthday cards with too many exclamation marks and inside jokes only we understood. But then came the later years, the parts one didn't like watching. The nights I sat alone at the pub table while she disappeared with strangers. The dismissive tone when I shared something important. The careless texts, the forgotten birthdays. The way my victories never mattered, but her problems always took center stage. It was like putting two lives on a scale. On one side, a decade of history, promises, and memories that had shaped me. On the other, the exhaustion, the disappointment, the growing realization that this friendship had stopped being safe, stopped being mutual, stopped being love. The guilt clawed at me. I imagined her alone, spinning in the same cycle, telling herself that I had abandoned her when she needed me most. The thought of being cast as the villain in her story tore at me. Because for so long I had defined myself by being the reliable one, the safe one, the one who stayed. But then another thought crept in, quieter but steadier. What about me? What about the version of myself I'm abandoning by staying in this friendship? What about the goals, the peace, the happiness I've been sacrificing just to keep a promise I made when I was 12? For the first time, I asked myself if loyalty can expire. If always means forever, even when forever is suffocating. And the answer terrified me, because deep down, I already knew. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about me deciding whether I wanted to keep carrying a bond that had turned into chains that I didn't know what I'd say the next time she showed up, or if I'd even let her in. All I knew was that the question was no longer, am I the asshole for thinking of ending this friendship? The real question was, am I strong enough to finally choose myself? It happened faster than I thought it would. I had imagined a long, drawn-out decision, countless sleepless nights before I finally said the words out loud. But sometimes life doesn't wait for you to be ready. It pushes you into the choice you've been avoiding. A week after our confrontation, she texted me late on a Saturday night, pub 9 p.m. Be there. No question mark, no please. Just an order, as if nothing had happened. That I stared at the screen for a long time. My first instinct was to go, to smooth things over, to keep the peace like I always had. But something inside me shifted. I thought about the relief I'd felt the past week, the quiet nights filled with books, movies, and conversations with people who actually asked how I was doing. I thought about how this friendship, it's not working. It hasn't been for a long time. For a moment, I thought she might laugh, like it was all a joke. But then her face twisted with anger. Wow, 10 years. 10 years, and this is how you repay me? You think you're better than me now? Is that it? You get a job, some classes, and suddenly you're too good for me. Her words stung, but less than I thought they would. Because deep down, I realized she was confirming everything I'd been afraid of. She didn't see me, not really. She saw what I gave her, what I provided, but not the person I was or the person I was becoming. I'm not better than you, I said softly. I need something different. I need peace. And I can't find it with you. The silence that followed was heavy, charged. For the first time in our entire friendship, I didn't try to fill it. I didn't apologize. I didn't soften the blow. I just let it sit there between us like the final line in a book. She scoffed, muttered something under her breath, and stormed out. The door slammed so hard the frame rattled, and just like that, 10 years ended. I stood there in the quiet, my hands trembling, my chest tight. Part of me wanted to run after her, to patch things up, to take it all back. But a deeper part of me, the part that had been whispering for months, finally exhaled, because for the first time in a decade, the silence wasn't suffocating. It was freedom. The apartment felt eerily quiet after she left. No buzzing phone, no chaotic laughter echoing down the hall, no whirlwind of drama pressing at my walls. Just me. For a moment, the silence was unbearable. 10 years of habit doesn't break cleanly. I sat there on my couch, fighting the urge to pick up my phone and text her just to feel something familiar again. But then I realized, familiar doesn't always mean good. I thought about how long I had carried this friendship, the nights I held her secrets, the times I sacrificed my own peace just to keep her from falling apart, the years of putting myself second so she could be first. And then I thought about the last few months, how exhausted I had been, how unseen I had felt, how much I had shrunk inside myself just to keep the promise of always. That promise had been made by two children who didn't know who they would become. And maybe that was the hardest truth to accept. People grow, but not always in the same direction. Sometimes love means holding on, but sometimes love means letting go. I don't hate her. I don't even regret the years we spent together. She was a part of my story, a loud, messy, unforgettable part. But my story isn't over, and I can't keep writing it with someone who refuses to turn the page. Am I the asshole for walking away? Maybe in her eyes, yes. Maybe to some people, loyalty should mean clinging no matter what. But I've learned that loyalty without boundaries isn't loyalty at all. It's self-destruction. And for once in my life, I chose me. If you've ever been stuck in a friendship that felt more like a burden than a bond, you'll understand. If you've ever kept someone in your life out of guilt, out of fear of being the bad guy, you'll understand. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find the courage to choose yourself too, because at the end of the day, friendship is supposed to lift you up, not weigh you down. And I finally realized, it's not betrayal to walk away. It's survival. Thank you for watching this story on True Tales Hub. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next story. That we post new tales twice a day, and each one comes with unexpected twists you won't see coming.